Jack McCaffery, a sports columnist over at the Delaware County Daily Times. I woke up, read his piece on Dallas Green, and really thought, man, what a great piece and what a great story about a guy who, like I said, I used to see him at spring training every single year. I was down at spring training and did not see him this year, and just felt a little different. And I guess that's the kind of impact, Jack, that Dallas Green had on the Phillies, that he had that kind of impact that you noticed when he wasn't around.
He did, and Mikey, he was the guy that always had something to say, and he always had something to say of value. When he said something, it meant something, and it reverberated, and people heard it, and that's when the column I wrote today, you go back to 1980, when he went into that locker room and started shaking things up, to me, the entire history of the Phillies changed.
Yeah, and that's really the basis of the article, is that this was a team that forever was just coming up short or wasn't up to par, or wasn't up to standards. He reshaped the farm system. People don't remember that. Before he was, he kind of got it going into that 1980 direction. So he really is maybe the biggest person in Phillies history. I mean, is he the biggest name in Phillies lore?
Sure. I mean, obviously, you're probably not going to top what happens on the field. So you go with Schmidt, Carlton. But I know what you're saying. As far as somebody who had the most impact on where that franchise was and what it became, I really put it on Dallas Green. And nobody is a bigger Pete Rose fan than me. I still vote for him for the Hall of Fame. But when you talk about the legend is that Pete Rose was the guy who put that 1979-80 team over the top. It was really Dallas Green when he came down in 1979. He said, we're not having this anymore. We're not failing in the playoffs anymore. We're either going to win or somebody's going to be out of here, and it's not going to be me. And it turned out that coming down the stretch in 1980, that team was running on fumes. Dallas Green made 3 significant everyday changes. He for the most part, benched Greg Lazinski, Gary Maddox, and Bob Boone, played Lonnie Smith, Dale Unser, and Keith Moreland. The team started to get a little hot. They got into the playoffs. By that time, he had his regular lineup back in there again, and they had learned how to win. What happened at that day and age was that it took a while. It took about a year and a half, but that team finally took on the personality of Dallas Green, which was, no, the Philadelphia Phillies do not have to lose. They don't have to fail. They can win, and we will win. And that was the attitude that they had. It took, 100 years, whatever it was. Since 1883, they were around. And they lost every year. They never won a championship until 1980. And they didn't win it until the team took on Dallas Green's personality.
Jack McCaffery.
It's been fairly decent ever since.
Yeah, pretty good. Jack McCaffery with us. And Jack, could you argue then, so Dallas Green gets them to the top of the mountain in 1980. Could you argue then that they don't get there again in 2008 if Dallas Green's influence isn't upstairs? Because Chris Wheeler told us yesterday that Dallas Green and Charlie Manuel, they went toe-to-toe. They went nose-to-nose, and they were like oil and water in the beginning, and yet they found a way to resolve those differences, and the Phillies won it all again.
A couple of guys, you know what? What is a team who loses a team? Dallas Green was involved at that point. He, again, was anything but accepting of failure, and he let it know. He let it know that anytime there was any kind of losing streak of substance, you, as a writer or as a broadcaster, you always knew if you go to Dallas Green, he was going to set the record straight and say he was not going to sugarcoat it. He was not going to say, oh, everything's going to be fine. He was going to say this is unacceptable. And if ever a franchise needed that, it was the Phillies. And up until 1980. And I know that you can really fast forward quickly from 80 to 08. But there were some opportunities in between. The Phillies matured at that point from 1980 on, I believe, from a team that expected to lose to at least a team that thought it always had a chance to win. Occasionally they would go out and buy the big free agent. They would disappoint once in a while. They disappointed a whole lot during some eras there. They retrenched during the Terry Francona era, but they were always in some kind of motion towards success. And then that peaked again in around 2007. Dallas Green was still around, and to me, he always had an influence up until the day he died.
Yeah, I bring up Charlie Manuel, but another guy I could have brought up with Dallas Green was in 2005 when he basically chased down Ryan Howard and had a little speech with him because Howard had just been demoted to the minors and was kind of pouting, and his agent thought maybe he should be traded, and Howard was ticked off, and boy, you don't walk away from Dallas.
No, and because Dallas had a lot of weight in that organization, and he had it for a long time. It was always a Delaware-run organization going back to the Carpenters. Dallas was the big star coming out of Delaware, and he was a player for the Phillies. He, as you mentioned, he rebuilt that farm system and gained great respect doing that. Then he managed their first championship team. By that point, Dallas Green had full authority to say and do what he wanted to do in that organization. And again, you make a great point, Pete. He got Ryan Howard straight. It turned out.
Jack McCaffery with us.
So,
go ahead, Jack.
So it turned out that Ryan Howard had a great career too. So yeah, he had great authority in that organization, and it showed. And he's going to be a tough one to replace.
So Dallas Green, a player, a manager, a GM, an advisor. How about that impact that he had on the game for multiple organizations? Because you mentioned the Cubs in there, and everybody remembers how he snuck Sandberg into that deal. But he had influence in multiple organizations. Steinbrenner and the Yankees. He was in multiple teams.
Right. He managed the Mets. He was a guy that I know there's one thing that it pained him at the end when Ryan Sandberg wasn't as successful as people might have hoped. I know that he was rooting for Ryan Sandberg to be a success, and it just wasn't going to happen. And when you brought up Ryan Sandberg, I remember talking to Dallas when it was pretty clear that Ryan Sandberg was at his last days as Phillies manager, and you could tell that he was pretty disappointed in that. Everybody was. You would have thought Ryan Sandberg would have been a great manager, and it turns out he was anything but. So everybody makes some mistakes, but he didn't make a mistake on knowing Ryan Sandberg's talent, getting the Phillies to toss him as a throw-in in that deal that really helped revitalize the Cubs when Dallas went to the Cubs as general manager and then president.
Yeah, him and Uncle Hugh Alexander.
Yeah, and then they sent Von de Jesus to Philadelphia. People forget the Phillies won National League in 1983 with Von de Jesus. So. You don't give up Ryan Sandberg, a Hall of Famer, and call it a win. But Philly's got a World Series out of it, too.
Jack McCaffery, columnist at the Delco Times. Jack, just, Larry Bowa was almost in tears yesterday. And, there was a lot of talk back when Dallas was the manager that the players didn't even like him, that they wanted spite of, not in spite of him, but they did not like him as, some of the things. But it shows the respect, Pete Rose, Boa, the way that these guys have come out and said, we wouldn't have won if not for him.
Exactly, and that was not the sentiment when he first got down there. The sentiment was, we were champions in 76, 77, 78. We won 101, 102, whatever games they won in those years. They were just had some misfortune in the playoffs. They were some of them were headed to the Hall of Fame. They were all All-Stars. They were all pretty highly paid. They were the instant reaction was the last thing they needed is some big mouth guy coming down from the front office. And I say the word big mouth as descriptive. That's what he was. And he played in the Dallas Green. The guy was loud, okay? But he came down from the front office, was loud in the clubhouse, to say the least, and got those guys shaken up. And their immediate reaction was, we don't need this guy. And they were 5 games behind in August in 1980, and thereabouts when Dallas started to make substantial moves within the batting order. And at one day, he never put a finger on it, but there was a day when it just clicked in that locker room that, you know what, this guy was perfect for us. And again, I keep coming back to the same phrase, but they took on his personality. They took on his swagger. It took him almost a calendar year, but that's exactly what he took over in August of 79. By August of 80, when the Phillies finally made their move, they had become Dallas Green's team. It was a very difficult calendar year. They resisted it at first, but when it happened, they all realized that this is the guy that's perfect for what we need at this time.
Jack McCaffery with us. Jack, you mentioned that conversation about Ryan Sandberg. Do you remember a specific conversation or a great story that you have over your years of covering Dallas Green that you could share with us?
Nothing specific. Always just, again, his you admire a guy that didn't tolerate failure. And that's kind of the point I tried to make in my column today, was that not so much that the Phillies tolerated failure, but it was almost like they were expected to lose at some point. And this was a guy that was not going to put up with it. And, so many conversations with Dallas over the years, so many. None so good. Again, the one that I thought that I pointed out was his disappointment with the effectiveness of Ryan Sandberg. And he to the end, he kind of was wishing that Sandberg would be a better manager than he was, and you could just tell the disappointment there at the end. But other than that, the great thing about Dallas was you didn't go to Dallas just to have him complain, because that wasn't what he was. You went to Dallas when you knew that it was the right time for somebody to complain. And Dallas was if it was time for somebody to complain, Dallas Green was going to raise his hand. He was going to throw his hat in the ring. You need somebody to complain? I'm complaining. I'll be the first one to call this team out. And that was, any organization needs a guy like that. And you don't need too many guys like that. And it's got to be done at the right times. He didn't criticize the Phillies 365 days a year for 30 years. But when it needed to be said, that was the voice that Phillies needed to hear, and needed to hear it more than once.
Yep, called them out for having no heart. He called out Scott Rowland, said Pat Burrell, the middle of the lineup's not producing. I mean, he certainly left his mark on the Phillies. And Jack McCaffery writes a full column at Delco Times, the appreciation of the manager who reshaped Phillies history, who's now no longer with us. Jack, a great piece. We appreciate you sharing some time with us.
Thanks, guys. Thanks, Mike. Thanks, Pete.